One of Kenya's greatest sons has fallen. One among only 4 men since independence to have led this great republic as head of state and commander-in-chief is no more. Kenya's flag tonight flies at half-mast in his honor. A nation cast into mourning, a people united in grief. April 22nd, 2022, a date that will remain etched in our minds. My name is Freddie Ndimule. This is Weekend Prime, and I will be taking you through this broadcast for the next 3 hours or so. This is our special coverage of the death of retired President Emilio Mwai Kibaki, third president of Kenya, who passed on today at the age of 90. Now, the late President Mwai Kibaki will be remembered for a lot he did during his 10 years at the helm. An economist by training who was privileged to serve in key ministries, including that of finance. Kibaki occupied State House, having felt the heartbeat of a nation he dedicated close to 40 years' service to. Tonight we take you back in time. We have his achievements and contributions that he made in the different capacities that he served.
Naapa kwamba nitatenda kazi zangu za urais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya kwa uaminifu.
Watching him at Uhuru Park, in a wheelchair and his leg in a cast and with a neck brace and all that, I think it was, a moment to savor. For myself, my family, and for many Kenyans, because he was the right president at the right time.
Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu unisaidie.
The hope of a nation hungry for change was placed in the hands of Emilio Mwai Kibaki in a historic and euphoric handover of power at the Uhuru Park in Nairobi on the 29th of December 2002. And he was later to spell out in one sentence what would define his leadership for what turned out to be 2 terms of a presidency like Kenya had never seen since independence.
If you recall the president's first Madaraka Day address to the nation, in 2003, he stated that Kenya would now be a working nation. And many people, are wondering, what does it mean, working nation? But you can see the president and his government have gotten Kenyans back to work. And the work vibrancy now you see in the country is something that we have not seen maybe since the 1970s or 1960s.
He was very clear that that's what he wanted to set out, do trickle-down economics, create a rich category of people, let them percolate the resources downwards. And he's done that very well. With banks, nowadays you can get loans from anywhere, but the loans are available to the poor, all right, but we have created a new class, a class of the new rich. When you go around the country, you see buildings coming up. They're not being put up by Indians or by Muzungus. They're being put up by fellow Africans.
Amid skepticism and impatience among some of the citizens of Kenya, Kibaki immediately embarked on what would later become the talk of the nation, an aggressive focus on changing the transport, energy and telecommunications infrastructure.
If Kibaki says he will do, Kibaki does. He told us he'll do the roads, he did them. We remember him for infrastructure. He's refurbished the airport completely. I go there, I don't. Sometimes you're on the plane, it moves around for 15 minutes before it takes off. The Syokimau thing he put up the other day, the train station. Kibaki's interest is infrastructure, and we remember him purely for that.
If you look at the tremendous investment in infrastructure that has gone on in the last 10 years, is because he's a trained economist, and that is his passion. Economics has always been his passion, and there is no country that can grow economically without the right and proper infrastructure. So, people, marvel at things like the Thika superhighway and things like that, but these are things that the country needs. These are not grandiose projects. The new airport coming up at Jomo Kenyatta, and the huge seaport at Lamu. These are all things that are geared give Kenya and maintain Kenya's economic edge in this region.
Kibaki wrote to the presidency on 2 strong promises. One of them was to give Kenyans free primary education to open up learning for children from poor families. This was a project that would earn him the respect and admiration of the world, at least before criticism began on how Education Ministry officials were handling or mishandling the funding for the free education project.
The first day he entered State House, he told me, prepare a statement which we shall say the Minister for Education must announce free education. Whether you people have money or not, you'll tell me where money will come from.
After 24 years of President Daniel Moi, who was in the news practically every single day, Mwai Kibaki's presidency took Kenyans by surprise. His opinions on national matters were rarely ever publicly expressed, and he kept his communication to the public to national policy issues expressed through official channels.
Kibaki has been less of a meet the people president. Kibaki has been a bit official. Yeah, when he's come from overseas trips, yes, he has paused for 2-3 minutes to see the dancers, and then he was gone. Moi's arrival from an overseas visit was a big event. We in the newspapers, we were going to get our story from there. He would take almost an hour or more at the airport.
He is not at your back when you are doing the job he has given you. He encourages ideas. I think this is why he succeeds in getting the economy grow.
In the analytical pieces of most Kenyan television stations and in the editorials and opinion pages of most Kenyan national newspapers, one of the most persistent depictions of Mwai Kibaki was that of a hands-off president. Whether this was the rightful characterization of Mwai Kibaki depends on whom you speak to about the issue.
No, I don't agree at all. He might, he's not a hands-off leader at all. I mean, he participates in everything, and he knows what really happens in this country every moment that he has been the president of this country.
Those who say that people don't know President Kibaki, he has been spot on when he chairs cabinet meetings. All right? He's thoroughly briefed on every cabinet memorandum, and when he's on the chair, he does not delegate. He chairs 2 committees of cabinet. One is a main cabinet, and the other one is a cabinet committee on security, on national security and foreign affairs. He takes these things very seriously. But when it comes to allowing his ministers to perform, he does well, but he also demands accountability, because they report when they come up with those cabinet memoranda. Everybody has to justify what it is they're trying to do. And I think after that he allows them to work. I don't think you can call that hands-off.
One thing I've seen with Kenyans, and it's all of us, we are addicted to politics. We are addicted to politics, and I think it's now in our blood. So while Kenyans were debating political issues, the president was building the country. And people, used to say, no, but why is the president so quiet? Why isn't he commenting on this and that? But you see, it has always been his style only to comment on important issues. When people make statements and do things, and he believes they should know better because they are leaders, he would not comment on that. As leaders, he's always believed you're elected to do something. You're elected to serve the people of Kenya. You're elected to implement government policy. So getting involved in unnecessary political debates has never been his style.
Kibaki's hands-off style has been both good and bad. One, it is bad because everybody thinks that the state is a soft-bellied animal that you can bully. And that's the reason why you're having militia groups killing policemen, because they're saying, Serikali, kitu gani? It's a soft-bellied, woolly kind of organization. And the toughness of the state has been watered down. Our regional regionally, the leaders around us and the people around us don't respect us anymore.
Nikisema Harambee, semeni Kibaki tena. Lakini nikisema ya pili, Harambee ya pili, semeni Kibaki aendelee.
Mimi Mwai Kibaki naapa kwamba nitatenda.
It is perhaps the beginning of Kibaki's second term as president that will serve as the most painful memory, not just for him, but also for the Kenyan nation. Post-election violence that exploded after the announcement of the presidential results in the 2007 election will forever be a blemish on his presidency.
Tulifanya uchaguzi, ulikuwa kimataratibu, umiliangaliwa sawasawa. Mimi mwenyewe niliipashwa habari hiyo na nikafuata habari hiyo na ninazidi kufuata sheria vile ilivyo, na yeyote ambaye hakutosheka ana haki ya kwenda kotini.
Why in the name of God did it happen? That's the violence of 2007, 2008. Why? Because it tainted the presidency. Why? Because the opposition was loud in declaring from the very beginning that the vote has been stolen. Vote stolen, then we went into violence, unprecedented in the country's history. We cannot like those two. We don't like those two. Then three, that saddled him with a coalition government. He hoped to get a straight mandate where he would be calling the shots unfettered, unhindered, but it didn't happen.
The most trying time for him in his presidency, of course, was, and for all of us really, I think for every Kenyan, was after the 2007 election. You have to understand that people of that generation really were deeply troubled by those events of early 2008. They had lived all their lives in a peaceful country, and they never believed that Kenyans could turn against each other in such a way. For him personally, it was quite distressing because, first of all, you have the responsibility as a president, to figure out what's going on and to try and return the situation back to normal as quickly as possible. But secondly, like I say, as an elderly gentleman, and a person of a certain age, it was quite distressing.
The post-election violence changed Kibaki much as it changed the country. No president since independence had to endure the scorn of his people or witness their anguish. No Kenyan president had yet to endure the ignominy of international criticism. What Kenyans saw were the world's most powerful nations sending their emissaries to Kenya on missions to end the violence.
Diplomatic pressure was brought to bear on the president, on the prime minister, though he was of course seen to be the one who is aggrieved. But even him, he was under heavy pressure. And of course I got to know, because in the midst of all this, I can tell you I stood very strong with President Kibaki, all through. As his vice president, everybody was concerned that this country could go the wrong way. So, and of course they're all like prodding you along, say you must sort this out. And I think really we must, with a bit of hindsight, we should congratulate all of us as Kenyans. The Prime Minister, the President, and particularly the President, because he demonstrated great patience. This I can tell you. I don't think that there are many leaders in this continent with the type of patience that I've seen being demonstrated by President Kibaki.
But what happened behind the stiff handshakes and contrived photo opportunities were events that tested the mettle of Kenya's quiet commander-in-chief. Threats that Kenya could become a pariah in the face of the international community should Kibaki insist on what he felt was his legal right to power. And because of the violent disunity in Kenya at the time, Kibaki would stand by and watch as the keystone of his legacy, the economy, crumbled in a matter of months. A proud economic growth rate of 7% built over 5 painstaking years vanished in plumes of smoke of the country set alight by enraged voters.
Nobody would wish political violence as we experienced on any president. And I think Kibaki sees that as a scarlet letter on his forehead. That Moi never took us to war. I am the one who took the country to war. And I think it's something that makes him a sad man. He did not intend for that to happen.
At the negotiating table in Serena Hotel, Nairobi, the two sides of the political divide, forced to come together to negotiate a way to pull Kenya back from the brink, hit stalemate after stalemate.
You will recall that one time, Kofi Annan announced that he had brought to an end the consultations at the Serena, and he looked like he was going to leave in a half, right, in a hurry. I was able to get to President Kikwete and say he actually arrived on time, because that's when Kofi Annan was supposed to leave. And when he arrived, he was able then to get, in fact, initially he was coming overnight, but he ended up staying 2 days.
The country watched and waited, devouring any news of movement towards some agreement, until 2 months and 1 day from December the 27th in 2007, when things began to go wrong.
I remember Minister for Constitutional Affairs that time, Mother Karua, was very concerned about the phrase that the Prime Minister was going to be the supervisor of government business. And I tell you, those talks almost collapsed over that until President Kikwete came in and assured the President that Prime Minister's role did not in any way conflict with the President's role as the head of government and the head of state. Because that was what I think on that score, you can rest assured that if I had an input, then I think we shortchanged them, if you like.
We do have a deal.
Kibaki did share power with Raila Odinga to bring sanity and peace back to the country. He would get his chance to redeem himself, even if it was with half of the people he wanted to do this with, and with double the size of government he went into the 2007 election with. But it wasn't as if Kibaki hadn't faced a hostile partner in government before. Mwai Kibaki's government would also be remembered for massive corruption scandals that never went anywhere in terms of investigations or prosecution. Immediately the NAC government took over power in 2002, the infamous Anglo leasing scams began. 2 billion Kenya shillings was paid for a white elephant, a contract for production of passports with enhanced security features which Kenyans never saw. Another 3 billion shillings was paid for building and equipping forensic labs for the CID. Before the dust could settle on that one, another 5.9 billion shillings of taxpayers' money was lost in another scam involving computerization of the Kenya Police ECOPS project. Altogether, the Anglo leasing scams were bigger than the Goldenberg scandal that occurred before the Kibaki regime. The then anti-corruption chief John Githongo had to run away to exile in Britain after he blew the whistle over these scams.
The initial response and support from the Kibaki administration, people like the president himself, people like Kiraito Murungi, who was our Minister of Energy, was very solid. But it became clear after a while that these scams reached all the way to the president himself. So what do you do? And that's when everything stopped. And so I would say that by August of 2004, the real fight against corruption under the Kibaki administration had stopped. And by 2005, even the pretense began to fade. Under this coalition government, which came after the violence of 2008, there's no pretending. We create institutions, but if you talk to ordinary people, you talk to officials, they don't really believe it.
The fight against corruption, first the handling of John Githongo, right? The whistleblower, and there are those major issues that are still unresolved. Yeah, I think we cannot pretend that we have done gloriously well in the fight against corruption. There lies the challenge for the incoming leadership.
President Mwai Kibaki is also accused of letting Kenya's security go to the dogs. It is during his tenure that record numbers of security officers have been killed by illegal gangs, groups and cattle rustlers from the Mombasa Republican Council to bandits in Baragoi. Kibaki leaves the State House at a time when Kenya Defense Forces are out in Somalia at war with the Al-Shabaab militia. Both President Kibaki and the KDF soldiers have received accolades for the relative success of the operation in Somalia. Kibaki's history as a politician is as long as the history of independent Kenya. From an assistant lecturer in the economics department of Makerere University, he entered politics, becoming a member of parliament in 1963 and never again leaving parliament. He served as Minister for Commerce, Minister for Finance, Vice President, Minister for Home Affairs and Minister for Health. The order in which he served in these positions tells part of the story of Kibaki's political fortunes. In the Kenyatta cabinet, Mwai Kibaki was the man in whom the president saw Kenya's economic future. He was entrusted with developing the DNA for what is one of Kenya's most famous strengths in the region, commerce. It was then a short step for him into an even more powerful docket, that of finance.
When we were having challenges with IMF and World Bank, I remember we went to Parliament, that's I think 1992, and I was with my friend and colleague, professional colleague, James Eman Maroba, and we were saying, look, what will Kenya do to convince IMF, World Bank that we need money? He says, put your house in order. Once you've put your house in order, go to the Bretton Woods institutions. All they need to do is to look at what you are putting before them and say, we are giving Kenya a clean bill of health, a clean bill of health. If IMF and World Bank do that, the scenario in the country will change and investors will come flocking in. He had that sparkle, that confidence, that command of the facts.
But then politics would get in the way. When Daniel Moi was sworn in as president, Kenyatta's blue-eyed boy Mwai Kibaki would understudy Moi as vice president while also holding firm the reins of the economy. But as time wore on and the politics of the day became more divisive, Kibaki was no longer the asset but a serious liability to his boss and a representation of an elite that surrounded Kenyatta and alienated Moi. Kibaki's role as finance minister would end, being given the wooden spoon of the Home Affairs ministerial docket while still serving as vice president. But in 1988, when Moi sensed rebellion, Kibaki would be among the casualties of his suspicion. He lost the vice presidential portfolio, getting the less glamorous health portfolio. All, it would seem, was lost. Or was it?
Kibaki has been a patient man. I'll give you an example. When President Moi dropped Kibaki from the vice presidency and took him to the Ministry of Health, the president was playing a clever game. The Ministry of Health anywhere in the world is a problem ministry. It is controversial. You don't want to go there. Most people do not want to go there. Kibaki was dropped from the vice presidency. There were people who expected he would reject the Ministry of Health, or he would, to use, for lack of a better term, throw a tantrum and issue some, or refuse the posting. President Kibaki, as if, okay, then he wasn't president. Mr. Mwai Kibaki, as if nothing had happened, he went to health and he set about reorganizing the Ministry of Health. When he went there, that's the time when AIDS was we were hearing about AIDS for the first time, and fear of the disease was spreading faster than the disease. The person tasked with calming the nerves of Kenyans, the person tasked with comforting Kenyans, and of course cautioning Kenyans was Kibaki, and he did it well. He coined the slogan, "Watu waache kutangatanga."
On Christmas Day 1991, days after Moi's suggestion that Section 2A of the Constitution be repealed to allow Kenya to enter into the multi-party era, KTN ran a news graphic of a letter from the desk of Mwai Kibaki. It was his resignation from government to join the opposition. So would begin his 10-year journey to the presidency.
Sisi tunajua kwamba tutashinda. Tufuate umoja, tafute haki. Kenya mpya imeshajengeka. Yule imeshajengeka.
He's a great man. He was inside Parliament. I watched him when he was in the opposition, young man, and I'm still surprised. Kibaki would stand for a now. You know, talk English and really dealing with a very tricky debates. He would talk for 1 hour without stopping. And that's the same with Kiswahili. You know, without any accent that you would think he's without any accent at all.
But his foray into politics that year was, some argued, the reason that more legitimate presidential candidates like the late Jaramogi Odinga or Kenneth Matiba did not clinch the presidency then. When all votes were counted, the opposition had garnered more than 65% of the vote, split 3 ways.
Running a presidential campaign or campaigning for the presidency in this country is not a joke. You have to be fully committed. You need a lot of volunteers. You need a lot of resources. And for many people, because we ran in 92 and 97 and we didn't succeed, a lot of our friends and supporters were, wondering, really, is it worth it? Because I'm telling you, it's quite a task. It's quite a task, and we have done 4 presidential campaigns, and spent a lot of time and resources on them, because you're covering the whole country from north to south, east to west. From 97, we worked very hard to bring the opposition together, because we knew a lesson we should have actually known from 1990 or 91, that it was only a united opposition that was going to, remove Kanu from power. So they were very interesting times, because those 5 years we spent our time meeting people and leaders from different parts of the country, and then it culminated in the National Rainbow Coalition of 2002.
Mimi Mwai Kibaki naapa kwamba
he finally got it in 2002.
Wa Jamhuri ya Kenya kwa uaminifu na kutimiza wajibu wa kazi hizo.
The State House sanctioned pictures of Mwai Kibaki reading to his grandchildren present the image of a man many Kenyans have long believed him to be. Mwai Kibaki has kept a tight control on and access to any information about his family. At one point, he was forced to break his silence and come out to dispel rumors about a second wife.
You know, and I know, and everybody else knows that I'm married and I have only one wife. And everyone in Kenya knows it.
The president lives at State House, so we normally interact with him at State House. And State House is quite an intimidating place. So after interacting with him, in a private home here in Muthaiga, now we visit him at State House. Of course, for him, he had to sacrifice a lot of his family time. And I know he'd have wanted to spend more time with his grandchildren when they're growing up. In fact, every time he sees them, he's amazed, how quickly they're growing.
The president's most memorable moments in the history of his presidency will perhaps come from some of the big turning points during his 10 years as chief executive.
I think for him, his greatest moment, and for many of us Kenyans, was the promulgation of the new constitution. I think that was a real highlight. Kenya had been trying for more than 20 years to get a new constitution. So for him, that was something, a very deep and emotional moment for him. I think you could see, all Kenyans could see the joy on his face when he held up the constitution at Uhuru Park.
Those who know him say Kenyans will remember Mwai Kibaki's presidency for both his achievements and his failures, his peculiarities, his style, and his jokes.
We will miss that guiding hand and that strong, silent security. Because even in the troubles of 2008, a lot of people used to tell me, Jimmy, we're very worried, but we know we'll be okay because your father is there.
Wale wanaosema asante waseme, wale ambao hawana la kusema wasiseme chochote. Kwa sababu hata kama husemi, yale tumefanya yanajulikana, na inajulikana na kila mtu, hata mtoto gani. Kwa hivyo hatuna haja ya kupembeleza nyinyi au yeyote, hakuna haja.
Waacheni na wapiga tomo wapige tomo. Unajua tomo, ndomo, tomo, ndomo, ndomo, kazi endelee.
The legacy of Mwai Kibaki cannot be complete without the story of First Lady Lucy Kibaki. She was a present, strong and vocal force in the Kibaki presidency, especially during Kibaki's first term in office.
Tumurudishe hapo amalize. Yule hataki rais amalize yoyo yake 10. Tafadhali, atatafuta nchi nyingine. Akasimame huko.
Sababu tamaa yao nasikia ni kuingia State House. Sio kuongoza nyinyi, ni kuingia State House, walale hapo ndani pale president analala, wasikie vizuri. Lakini kitanda cha rais huku ni kimoja. Na kitanda cha first lady ni kimoja.
It's been quite an interesting 10 years. For my family, of course, it has been an honor. It has been an honor. And we look forward to the time to come.
Wala sina mambo ya kujibu maswali mengi. Maswali haya wewe utauliza huko unakoishi. Kuna watu wengi sana wenye kutaka kutangaza maoni yao. Na kuna mwenyewe hapa, au ni mama au ni baba, angali anajivuna kutembea mbele ya watu na hana aibu. Mtu kama huyo ni bure kabisa, anahitaji kutwagwa makofi. Hii mvua itakuwa ni kidogo, wewe hapana, hata gari yangu naona inatoroka yeye bure. Mwambie arudi nyuma. Ni pubafu kabisa. Maana unakuwa na maana gani duniani ikiwa wewe kazi yako ni wizi wa ng'ombe? Kweli una maana gani? Una maana, wewe ni binadamu ya mavi ya kuku.
Do not be encouraged by these fellows who keep talking loudly for nothing. Absolutely nothing. useless type of people who make big noise.
KTN News. Get the whole story. Cebu Housing invites you to invest in Bliss Gardens.